So I always felt like government keeps us out.
How did the president know you existed?
Yeah, I still don't know.
What's up, beautiful people? I'm Brandon. My friends and family call me BCam, and I'd like to welcome you to your extended family, where we explore culture through adventure and conversation with local communities around the world. We believe the best in humanity is when we learn from and embrace the differences in each other. So let's explore together, meet new people, and have new experiences, with a goal to make us all a little more open-minded, inspired by the people in the world around us, and with an ever-growing extended family.
My fucking camera stand broke, which is annoying as shit because I'm on my way to an interview, a conversation with the Chief Administrative Secretary of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs. It's a young lady that I met on social media, actually. She started following me, one of my posts went viral. I saw that she was a part of the government. She was a deputy administrator, and I was like, yo, I want to talk with people and know what like the political landscape is like in Nairobi. What's going on with the youth, what's going on the ground. So I'm excited to have a conversation with her. Let me hurry up and get up outside before my car leaves me. It's been a rough morning, but we're gonna have a good time. Let's get it.
Hello, habari. My name is Nadia Abdalla. I am the Deputy Minister in the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs in Kenya, and this is my extended family.
And so we're here.
Yes.
I'm so grateful to be here. I'm with Nadia
Abdalla.
Abdalla.
But you can
Okay.
call me Nadi.
Nadi. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yes.
And so we're here to have another conversation. I'm so happy and grateful to be in Nairobi, Kenya.
Yes.
And you are the chief. Can you please say your title? Because there's so many different
Yeah. It's a Chief Administrative Secretary,
Okay.
which is actually just Deputy Minister in a fancy way in Kenya.
Is Deputy Minister? Okay.
Yeah, it's Deputy Minister.
Because
Yes.
I've also heard them call you Cass.
Yeah, so
which
it's the
is-
short form. CAS.
Uh-huh.
So they say CAS instead of calling me Chief Administrative Secretary since it's very long.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also, but it said of ICT,
Yeah.
Innovation and Youth.
Yes.
What does that
So
mean?
it's a ministry that really focuses on ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs in Kenya.
What is ICT though?
ICT is Information Communication and Technology.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Because when I was reading all about you
Yeah.
and learning, every time I saw ITC, I knew it was an acronym,
Yeah.
but it never, like I could never.
Yeah, it's Information Communication and Technology. So
Okay.
we are on a national platform. We're in charge of communication in the country. We're in charge of the technology aspect, and so we're also in charge of innovation, and we're in charge of youth affairs.
Okay.
Because 3/4 of the country is below the age of 35, and our median age is actually 19 in Kenya.
In Kenya?
Yes.
So I thought that was the case in the whole continent as well. Is it only in Kenya?
So in the whole continent, 60% of the continent is below the age of 35.
Wow.
And the median age in the whole continent is also 19.
19, that's what I thought.
So we are
when I was-
similar to Kenya.
So that's amazing, right?
Yes.
It's only like that in Africa. Out of literally the entire world,
Yeah.
it's so. I think that's important for so many things. Not
Yeah.
only the opportunities for growth, whether it's socially, whether it's politically, whether it's
Yeah.
like progressive movements, whether it's economically, infrastructure, development. The
Everything.
fact that the median age is 19 puts a real like focal point on the future on the continent and specifically in Kenya.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I'm grateful. Thank you for allowing me to be here to have this conversation with you. And so there's a few things that I'm really curious about because whenever I go to specific cities, like I'm learning. I've been to all these places for the first time. Like this
Yeah.
is my first time in Kenya. Never experienced Kenya. I've been so I've been blown away, to be
Okay.
honest. I didn't have any perspective on what my experience would be like in Kenya.
Okay.
Part of that is intentional because I want to experience it like novel. Like I don't want to come in with any preconceived notions.
Yeah.
But I had no clue that Kenya, that Nairobi specifically was such a sprawling city. I had no clue that there was so many beautiful beaches on the north and the south coast.
Yeah.
I had a chance
That's
to go
where
to
I come from.
Yeah. I had a chance to go to Watamu and
Yeah.
Lamu.
Yeah.
So just give me a little bit of perspective about my experience. but so much I'm curious about. But before we do that, I'd like to get a little bit more background information on you, if possible, like where you're from.
Yeah.
I know you're from Mombasa.
Yes. Well, I'm the youngest deputy minister in the country.
Wow.
I got appointed when I was 29. I'm currently 31. So I'm the youngest. I'm a female. I come from a marginalized community, which is the coast. And I'm a Muslim. So it's all in one. I was born and bred in Mombasa. And then when I was 17, 18, I moved to Malaysia to do my bachelor's degree. So I have a bachelor's in public relations and communication.
Oh, wow.
I did that in Malaysia. So I lived in Malaysia for 5 years. I studied there, I worked there, and then I moved to Germany, in Berlin.
Oh, wow.
Where I went to study for my master's. So I have a master's in foreign policy and in cultural diplomacy and international relations. Yeah, and so one thing about me is I'm very well versed with community, with culture, because I believe that's the only way we can break the stereotypes around. So ever since I was a young girl, being raised in Mombasa, which is predominantly Muslims, and we are Swahilis, we are Arabs, there are Indians there, and this is the influence because we're on the coastal line, so there was a lot of trade coming in. So a lot of us are very, very mixed with different cultures and diversity, but a lot of times we were marginalized. Growing up, you'd always be told, like, you can only educate yourself, and then after that, if you're a girl, you get married, and that's about it.
Right.
But I was raised in a family of very strong women. And one thing I realized was my aunties and my late mom, they were always doing things that were beyond what the culture would accept. So at the age of 13, I had two idols in mind, because I was very much exposed to reading. I was reading a lot. Oprah Winfrey and the late Kofi Annan.
Wow.
So up until today, I would tell you that at some point in my life, I really would love to be the Oprah Winfrey of Kenya, of Africa. No, of Africa. Because I believe communication is the most important element to break stereotypes, to clear out ignorance. And so I've been talking and championing. I used to champion for sexual and gender-based violence in the coast. I am a writer. I am an author of 2 books now. I published my second book last year on my birthday, which is called Of Dreams and Whatever. So it's a tiny memoir about myself from when I was born up until where I am today. Sharing my experiences when it was, I experienced a bit of abuse when I was in university, but also trying to tell young people in Kenya and Africa as a whole, like, it's us. The generation is small, so we have to take up the institutions, diversify them, and participate. So in a nutshell, Nadia is just a person who always believes in speaking out her mind. And I was fortunate enough to get this opportunity by the president, and my experience has been fantastic, because I'm able to be myself and still inspire people outside and beyond Kenya, because this job has actually made me travel a lot outside. So.
Wow. So many questions,
Yes.
even from your introduction. I saw when I was walking, so I work out of a workspace in Westlands.
Yes.
And so when I was walking the street, literally yesterday, I saw the signs on the street that spoke about, education in Malaysia.
Yes.
So tell me, what about Malaysia is so enticing to Kenyans? Is there a relationship there?
Yeah. I think Malaysia is just the way they advertise it. So it's a multicultural, it's a whole melting pot of different cultures. And that's the same thing in Kenya. If you look at Nairobi as well, or if you look at Mombasa, if you look at Kisumu and beyond, we are a melting point of different cultures. So moving from Kenya to Malaysia, you don't, and I would say this, you don't really feel any gap, because it's the same thing in Malaysia as well. They have the Indians, they have the Malays, they have the Chinese. We have similar cultures. Our foods, especially for us who come from the coast, our foods are similar. But the one thing that is a selling point and value addition is the fact that education there is affordable. So like for me, as much as I was in Malaysia, but I was studying in University of Bristol. So they have their sister university in Malaysia.
Okay.
So it's much cheaper because of the accommodation and because of how the education is curated. So I think one of the biggest selling points is the fact that the education is affordable and you're able to study in an American or UK university or Australian university but when you're in Southeast Asia.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's really cool. So, and they honor obviously your education. Oh, look at our wrists.
Yeah. I was about to tell you you're Kenyan. Like every Kenyan has this.
Really?
Yes, this is like our patriotic emblem.
So it's funny because I actually just really love the aesthetic. I realized like it was a flag, but I loved it, and it's so funny because people mention it, and so I just happened to look over. I was like, "You have one?"
Yeah. Can you believe I've had this for 7 years?
Really?
Yeah. It's not come off for 7 years. How the Maasais make this, I don't know.
Is yours one that expands?
No. Mine. So I put it on 7 years ago, and I haven't taken it off. In fact, when I get a tan, you see, it's always something that's
so cool. So obviously they honor your education in Malaysia. Is it so? Because I understand like sometimes countries won't honor education from another place.
Yeah.
Was this an agreement between like the governments, or how does it?
No, I think there are a lot of institutions that are honored both in Kenya and abroad.
Okay.
Because a lot of Kenyans, let's say a lot of Kenyans who are able and capable to study abroad really go there. You have you would see other banners like study in the UK, study in the US, study in Australia, study in Canada, study in Russia, study in Ukraine. Like it's everywhere. So we have medical students who have studied in Ukraine, who've studied in Russia. We have artists who have studied in US.
Okay.
So I think it's our diplomatic ties and our education system here that is very much acceptable everywhere else in the world. And then in Kenya we have, so we had the 844 system, which is 8 years in primary, 4 years in high school, 4 years in university. And now we've transitioned to the CBC, which is the competence-based curriculum, which is now more of what the student is able and capable to do, and then the teacher complements that. And these two institutions, they're acceptable worldwide. And even in neighboring countries, you have Rwandese, Ugandans, South Africans. They come to Kenya to study the university without education. And then we also have the IGCSE, which is the UK system. We have German schools in Kenya. We have French schools. We have American schools. So it just depends on where you want to take your child and whether or not you're able to afford. Of course, there's some institutions that are much more expensive than others, but the Kenyan system is well acceptable everywhere in the world.
So that brings me to another question about Germany. So when you decided to take your education to Germany, what was enticing to you about going to Germany? Because at that point, you had been 18, you spent 5 years, so you kind of, college years are important in anyone's life. You kind of mature, you become another person. So at that point in your life, what made you decide to go to Germany?
I've always been a free spirit ever since I was young. And I never believed in staying at one place for a very long time. So I'm a Sagittarius, so we just fly away. And so once I was done with university in Malaysia, the plan was to come back home. And come back, start my own small consultancy, and then move from there. So I came back and I spent 2 months. I started my consultancy where I was teaching women and young girls how to be more articulate in their talks, but also to see how they can advance in their businesses. But then I knew that I still needed to do a course in foreign policy, and this was driven by the fact that one of my idols was Kofi Annan, and I wanted to one day be like the Secretary General of the United Nations. So I was like, I needed to go to a country that is able to teach me foreign policies that are different from the ones that I can acquire in Kenya. And so I was like, okay, there's UK, there's Europe, I should choose one. Then I did my research and I found this institution. It's called Institute of Cultural Diplomacy. Basically, it's an American-German institution where they teach about cultural diplomacy. And I was like, this is a new way of diplomacy, because usually most of the time diplomacy is about soft power and hard power, but they're teaching it using cultural differences. And one of the things that I advocate about up until today is diversity and inclusion. And so if you include that in diplomacy, it's literally an A+ when it comes to solving conflict, or when it comes to really being at tables where you can influence policy. And so that's actually my decision, based on the fact that I was going to get a new perspective. And then Berlin is the New York of Europe. because all other European countries come to Berlin to actually, it's like your life and your dreams are valid there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Berlin is like that. It's very fast paced, it's very tech savvy, but it's very accommodating of all other cultures.
So you would say Berlin is like that as opposed to London?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I found Berlin...
I haven't been to either, by the way. I haven't been to Berlin or London.
I was just in London, and I would tell you that, so London is very expensive.
Yes.
Berlin is actually very affordable in terms of, it's actually the cheapest European country to live in.
Really?
The rent is affordable, the food is affordable, the transport system is affordable, and you could actually just get jobs there as well. And because of the tech savviness in Berlin, there are a lot of tech companies that are coming up there. So a lot of startup culture is there, a lot of networking events. So, because it's a transition, Berlin has gone through a lot. So now, because of how they're trying to transition it and how they're building it, it's created a vast opportunity for other people. So I would say Berlin is more
that's really cool.
Fun, and it's fun as well.
So after Berlin,
yeah.
Now, what made you transition back? You get your degree, your second degree,
yes,
in Germany, and then what brings you back?
So it's quite a bit sad, but anyway, I came back in 2018. The plan was to come back and finish my thesis. I was writing a thesis about African feminism and how it benefits women economically, socially, and culturally in Kenya. So half of my research was supposed to be done in Kenya. So I came back, and that was what I was going to do before I go back to Berlin. And that's when my late mom was diagnosed with cervical cancer.
Wow, sorry.
Yeah, so I had to go back to Berlin, pack up, years of my life, come back to Kenya, and I'll take care of my late mom while taking care of my brother while finishing my thesis. And so that's how I found myself back to Kenya. In Mombasa specifically. So my mom was going through her sessions, chemo and all, and I became like now the mother of the house. But because of my zeal to always want to look for solutions and always work and be active, I continued with the small consultancy that I had started, and I was now emceeing. I used to do small MC gigs. I used to sell bottles, what are the eco-friendly bottles, but with value addition. I had this slogan that I came up with. It's called Be Your Own Vibe, and basically that was a slogan for me to tell people, be yourself.
Absolutely.
And also, it's okay not to be okay, because I've been a mental health advocate since 2016. And so I was like, I should actually incorporate mental health advocacy to my business. So on one side, I'm actually being a social change person, but on the other side, I'm making a bit of money for myself. And so I did that. I started selling.
So how were you making money?
So I had a savings, and at the same time I was staying at home. So I was not paying rent. I was not,
Right.
So I was just at home with the little savings that I have. And if I go for MC gigs or if I throw events, the money that I would get from the ticket sales, I would now reinvest it back and do something else.
Okay. So that's what you're doing. You were hosting events and emceeing events.
Yeah.
As a mental health advocate.
Yeah.
As a social change advocate. As a women's empowerment advocate.
Everything.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, so I did that, and I picked a niche because, as I told you, it's the coast region is a marginalized community, and so when you come up with new ideas, people want to know more, people want to do more, people want to be included, and because of the exposure that I got from outside, I used my experience to now incorporate it on this side.
Yes.
And so one thing led to another. Then it's 2019, I think mid of the year, I got appointed to the county. So we have, I think counties are like districts or something. Yeah, county. Do you guys have counties?
Yes, we have counties.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So to the county government in Mombasa as a chief tourism officer.
Okay.
So I just worked for like 4 months there. Before December, no. I worked for 4 months. And then in December, I was lucky enough to be picked as one of the workers there to go to China for a month to go for a training, tourism training. Yeah, that was during the COVID, but we didn't know that COVID was there yet.
Oh, it was like late 2019.
Actually, from December 1st to December 31st.
Oh, wow. So
we're in China.
in 2019.
So, yeah, in 2019.
Like right before, bam.
Exactly. And we got sick. So I'm pretty sure we are one of the people who got sick in China with COVID, but we just didn't know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we did that. So when I came back to Kenya, January 13th, that's when my life changed. I was just doing my own thing. Just woke up in the morning, was going to work, passed through a local joint, bought some breakfast, and went to the office. Then I get a phone call from a friend, and he was like, Nadia, what's your name? And I was like, because everybody knew me as Nadia Nadi. That was my stage name. When I'm emceeing, when I'm doing events, that was my stage name. So I told him Nadia Abdalla, and I asked why, and he said, I think the president just announced your name on TV. And I was like, stop pulling my leg. He's like, yeah, I'm so serious, let me send you the video. So he sends me the video on WhatsApp, and that was the last name the president calls out. So I had a moment. I was like, wait, what is actually going on?
Right.
Because, I was a typical young person, a young Kenyan who doesn't pay much attention to what goes on in government. And then I was from a marginalized community. So I always felt like government keeps us out of decisions, of programs. So I never paid attention. So when you hear something like this, you're like, okay, wait, did I do something wrong? Like, am I being called out because of something? Then I get another phone call and another one. Then some reporters called me, and they were like, oh, congratulations, madam. Can you come to the media house for an interview? I kid you not.
And you're like, congratulations for what?
Yeah, but then, when they said, come to the media house for an interview, in my head, I was just like, okay, it's an interview. Let me just go first. Then I'll figure out what is happening. So I actually left the building, took the tuk-tuk. I think you saw the tuk-tuks in what town. Took the tuk-tuk all the way to the media house.
Wait, this is in Mombasa?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Got to the media house, not knowing what exactly I've been called for, but I was ready for an interview.
Yeah.
And I sat down, and they tell me, so how do you feel being the youngest and being from Mombasa and now being a deputy minister? I was like, wait, what?
Wait.
I was like, wait. So I told them, hold on. I called my late mom. I was like, Mom, I think I just got a national government job. And she's like, Nadia, since you've been a young girl, you always have big dreams. So she was like, you have big dreams, you're always thinking big, can you stop being like this? I'm not feeling I said, Mom, I'm serious. She's like, stop kidding with me. And she hung up on me. So she didn't believe that. So I did the interview. Then she calls me back crying. She said, oh my God, my friends just told me you've been and I said, I have been telling you that I've been appointed. And that's when my life changed, because January 13th, the president announced. January 17th, we were called to be sworn in. January 20th, I assumed office. And that was it.
Just a week. But, there's so many questions in that. Like, first of all, how did the president know you existed?
Yeah.
How did he know about you?
I'm asking myself that same question up until today.
You still don't know?
I still don't know. So what I know is I heavily invested in my visibility online. And I will share with you after this, but on December 12th, 2019, that's our Independence Day, I released a video. And I was addressing the whole country and the government. And I was telling them that it's about time that we include young people in decision-making tables. It's about time we invest in technology. It's about time we invest in innovation. So I was literally, it was just more of, I'm just talking and let me put this video up. Now, that's December 12th. January 13th, I get appointed. So sometimes I feel like it's the universe. There was somebody else looking at me.
Wait,
yes.
What was the time difference from when you got appointed to when?
1 month. Actually,
What?
1 month. Yes. I actually have the video. Like, it's, and I tell people, like, it's insane, because the video, I was specifically speaking about things that I'm doing now. Like, I was talking about young people being included and young people being seen and technology. And the video up until today is on Instagram.
So this is the thing. You're going to have to send me the video. But this conversation just changed from one about like political infrastructure and intent to one of manifestation.
Yes.
This is like now.
It is.
Because I had no clue. I didn't know your backstory. I mean, of course, I've read your.
Yeah.
I've done my research, but I did not know the story behind you being appointed, and that you had no clue. You
I
didn't know the president.
I had no clue. I didn't know the president. I wasn't participating in any political.
You weren't even
gigs.
in politics.
I wasn't in politics. I literally was a typical normal Kenyan.
Wow.
From the coast. Literally. I was focusing on more of small NGOs and small gigs. I mean, I was emceeing and I would be paid 2,500 Kenyan shillings. That's like $25.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was so happy about that. And I would do events and I would charge $10 for a ticket and I would get the money from 40 people and I would be happy with that. Like, so it's very surreal, you know, how you get from one place to go to another. But I think it's also the fact that I've always known that my voice is bigger than myself. So whenever I do something, I always talk to people and say, you have to think of yourself as a bigger entity. You're just not someone small.
Absolutely.
So I'm guessing somebody was listening. Now the crazy part, or the most amazing part, and I have the video up until today, once we were sworn in, we were about 10 of us. Me being the youngest. Once we were sworn in, the president again singled me out in front of people and said, Nadia, you've been doing a lot of things on the ground with the community. Now you have the government's backing. Mind you, I'm around people who actually have been in politics, who have been appointed. And there's this girl who just was doing her own thing. And again, the president singles me out in front of everyone and says these things. So for me, it was like, it was
That's
crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the role that you've manifested yourself into.
Yeah.
And so again, you're the Chief Administrative Secretary, which means Deputy Minister of ICT, which is Innovation, Communication, Technology.
Yes.
Okay. And then of the Innovation and Youth Department.
Yes.
You see that's a mouthful, right? I'm just surprised I remembered it all. Okay. So tell me, like, what does that practically mean for you? And what does this allow you to do? Yeah.
So basically what it means, I deputize the minister. I deputize him. So our ministers are actually called cabinet secretaries.
Okay.
Yeah, so I deputize him.
Tell me what that means. I'm not familiar.
Okay. So it really just means you're like an assistant.
Okay.
So whatever it is that he has been mandated by the president, now then it comes down to me.
Okay.
As well. So the things that he can do, he will do it on his level.
Okay.
But then anything else that he's unavailable to do, or anything else that he cannot be there for, then I'm tasked to do that.
And who is he? Who's he again?
So my cabinet secretary is called Joe Musheru.
Okay, the cabinet secretary. Okay.
Yes, so he's the cabinet secretary in charge of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs. Now in this ministry, we are 2 CASs, Chief Administrative Secretaries. I have my colleague, her name is called Maureen Mbaka, and then I have myself.
Okay.
So Maureen, because the docket is so big, she's in charge of ICT.
Okay.
That aspect. And broadcasting and telecommunication, because it's still under us. And then on my side, I'm in charge of youth affairs.
Okay.
But now youth as well, it really cuts across everything, because young people are innovators, young people use technology, young people need to communicate, and young people also broadcast things. So basically, again, it comes back to me.
Right.
In a whole full swing that I have to do. So that on a formal side, I advise the minister in case he asks questions about policies that maybe we have intact and he would like an opinion about them, then I come in. In case he cannot be in a country where he needs to represent himself or represent the president or the ministry, then I go in. When it comes to really meeting young people and talking to them and giving them hope, that's what I do. Participating in different meetings, in different ecosystems that are there, we basically try to make a conducive environment and a holistic approach. So on a paper formal aspect, that's what I have to do. Now as Nadia, what that actually means is, it means me being the representation of the young people of Kenya and making them understand that we can actually occupy seats as well.
Absolutely.
Because I told you at the beginning that 75.1% of the country are young people. That's about 35 million plus.
Wow.
And our population is 50 million.
Wow.
Yes.
So 75%?
Yeah.
So and you call young people under the age of 35?
35 going down.
35 going down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we have to do. So when I got this position, and because of the different things I was doing, I had to sit down and really think, there's one aspect of you executing the work of the president. That's what you have to do, because that's what you've been appointed to do.
Right.
But then there's that other angle of, what do I want to be remembered for?
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, you need to leave a mark.
Absolutely.
And so I sat down with my team, I remember that time, and at first I broke down, because I was like, oh my God, I have no experience in government, I have no experience when it comes to different decisions. But then I was like, I have diplomatic experience, so I could actually use that with everything that I've done and put it together. And that's when I came up with a campaign called Kenyan ni Mimi campaign. So Kenyan ni Mimi means Kenya is me.
Okay.
And the reason I came up with that campaign is to reinstill back hope and intention back into the minds of young people. Because the reason why the president appointed young people was two things. One, he wanted us to help him break down systems and information to the young people of Kenya in our own language. You see, there's the government language, then there's the language of the young people.
Absolutely.
So he wanted us to assist him to do that. But number two, he wanted us to also prove to the entire country that young people can actually take leadership roles. And so when you are mandated to do that, you just have to look within yourself and say, this is what I'm going to do. And so I came up with that campaign, and I remember very well, it was in March that I did that. And it was a campaign that was going to help me disseminate information to young people. So the campaign has 5 pillars. There's the pillar for information and education, pillar for innovation, pillar for health and well-being, pillar for environment conservation, and a pillar for diversity and patriotism. Now, I wanted to, because there's a lot of information in the government, there's a lot of opportunities, but the channels in which this information is being given wasn't the right one for young people. Because our population is so big, you need to have different methods and ways in which you can reach out to them. Now, one thing about Kenyan youths or African youth as a whole, we speak through campaigns. Like, you want us to be interested in what you do? Campaigns. You want us to take part in reforms? Campaigns.
Tell me what you mean by that.
So,
because when you say that, I hear political campaigns. But what you mean is, what it sounds like you mean is social campaigns.
Yes.
Right? And so how you're heard, I'm thinking that meant like the youth is incredibly engaged in the political system.
Yeah.
But that's not what you mean.
No.
Tell me what you
so
mean.
what I mean is social campaigns.
Okay.
How I can structure my campaigns is a participatory kind of way. Like, I'm coming to you not to ignite a light for you to go and be disruptive. No, I'm coming to you to teach you so that you are influenced by your mind into taking up that position and taking up that role to do something different.
Right.
So most of my campaigns are fun, engaging, but also the campaigns make the young people understand that they own that narrative. Those are the campaigns I'm talking about. A campaign where you own the narrative. You're not being told what to do, but you're actually being told that you have the power to change it and to own it. So those are the campaigns that I was doing. And we had to look across and see where are we going to have these campaigns, because we have 47 counties in Kenya. And so we had to literally see how we can go through all these. But then now, I'm young, I'm new in the government. There's need to be trust, and there's need to be a way in which I'm not looking like I'm working on my own. And so I took that campaign idea to my cabinet secretary, and then from there to the president. And so from February up until December 7th, I was lucky enough to have the president launch that campaign.
Oh, wow.
Now, look at it in this way. This is a young person, never had experience in government, never had experience in politics, gets into government, comes up with a campaign at the beginning of her term, and then at the end, within 10 months, gets the president to actually launch the campaign for young people and gets him to approve. So that actually spoke in magnitude, and it was actually live on live TV, one of our biggest TV stations.
What was live on TV?
The campaign launch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me how that went. Explain it
So
to me.
basically, of course, anything, as I said, anything that you want to do, you have to get some sort of approval, some sort of,
Absolutely.
boost. And so at first, when I presented it to my cabinet secretary, I told him this is what I want to do. I had to first partner up with a developing partner. So our partner was UNFPA Kenya.
Okay, and who are they?
So UNFPA Kenya is a UN body that focuses on girl child and adolescents in the country. And so I pitched to them and I told them this is what we want to do, and they came on board to work with us. And now for us to make it very credit worthy, we needed to also get the president to be part of it, because I needed to show the president that this is what young people need. This is what they want. They want an engaging platform between you and them. And so we first went around a few of the counties talking to young people, telling them why they need to be responsible for the country, telling them why they need to be to change their minds, to participate and to take up Kenyas themselves. And so when we did that all the way up until November. So when it got to November, we now wanted to officially launch it, because we were doing sub-events, small events, just to engage with them. In December, we wanted to launch it, so we managed to invite 1,000 young people from across Kenya to come to Nairobi. And this is a big deal, because you're inviting young people all the way from Turkana, from Garissa, Northeastern, to Lower Eastern, everywhere up until Coast, and you're telling them you're coming to an event where the president will have a sit down with you guys and have an intergenerational conversation. And so that's what happened.
So what the work that you're doing is so important. Is so important.
Yeah.
Not only to Kenya, but I just think, and I think it's also great that the president has seen the value in intergenerational engagement, connection.
Yeah.
And so obviously, when you engage the youth, it does help, as a political individual, helps for the future, for the youth to remain engaged in political process, which is important.
Yeah.
But also, what you've been able to do by way of your position is important, because I think what we miss in today's society is that intergenerational engagement.
Yeah.
Where we're speaking like intergenerationally about the things that matter to us. Like we, it's so funny because you and I are in the stage where we're starting to become, we are like the middle children.
Yes.
The people who are younger than us don't think we're young.
Yeah.
But the people older than us think we're young, and we still see ourselves, as young people. And so I think like it's incredibly important when you think about the aspirations of someone that's 60, or their experiences, the things they've learned, the things that matter to them.
Yeah.
We learn a lot from them. But at the same token, they have a lot to learn from us, the people that are here, and we also have a lot to learn from not only them, but the youth. And I think as a society, if we progressively move towards one that's like us coexisting, us progressing, us evolving as humanity in whatever way that evolution exists, to me, to do it in the most, like, in the best way, or in the way that gains us the most progress, the most advancement, is one where we engage intergenerationally.
Exactly.
And so it's interesting that it's funny because you're just like, some of the things that in my mind are like my buzzwords, you're just like, boom, like energy. And so I say that, give you my perspective on why it's valuable to me, to ask you, why do you feel like why did you feel like intergenerational engagement was like so important?
It's important because I tell people this, as much as we are young people, and you said we're like the middle children, as much as we are young people, we still have a lot that we can learn from the ones who came before us. And there's a lot that we can also learn from the ones who are going to come after us.
Absolutely.
And there can never be a progressive, sustainable movement if we don't incorporate what they know with what we know. Absolutely. To create a new dynamic environment that is very holistic and very sustainable. And so I tell young people, because at the same time, as much as young people, we are like this and we're like that, at the same time they believe that what they know is right.
Absolutely.
And they always want to disregard what the ones who came before them come. But then you cannot do that. If you want to actually have a mutual beneficial environment or mutual beneficial world, or when it comes to development, you actually have to get information from the past, from the present, and then see how you can mold this together to the future. And so a lot of times when we are talking about intergenerational conversations, most of the older generations kind of push back. Sometimes they're not open to it. And
That's true.
This is one thing that highlighted so much when it comes to our president, because he is all about intergenerational conversation. He's all about inclusion, because he believes that this is how we can now progress and we can go on. But the rest, it's because of how I'll talk about the African structure is set up. Whether it's the older generation or the women, our society or communities are set up in a way that they make us believe that if you equip someone else with the knowledge that you know, they can become better than you and they can write you off from history, which is really not the case. The case is you try to equip someone with the information that you know and the knowledge, it actually gives you a boost, because that's your legacy. If today you hold a young woman or a young girl or a young man's hand and you say that this is what I want you to do, that young person will forever be indebted to you, because every time they go somewhere, they'll be talking about how they were empowered, how they were helped, how they were inspired. And it's the same thing like me today. Whether I come back to government after our elections or not, I will constantly talk about how the current president equipped me. I'll talk about how my cabinet secretary gave me my space to actually grow and be who I want to be. And that's a legacy, because not everyone is willing and ready to do that. And so that is why intergenerational conversations are critical when it comes to development, not only on a local level, but also on a much more larger scale, on a global level, even regionally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I have another question with respect, and I think it's maybe a pivot from intergenerational conversations, but I think it also may be like applicable to why they're important, because you talk about where you're from as well. We talk about how Kenya is such a diverse country, which again, just lack of exposure, right? I had no clue. So being from Mombasa and being a part of the Muslim community, I think you've mentioned a lot in your conversation about being from a marginalized community. I don't think I want you to explain what that means for you, because I think a lot of people, like you mentioned earlier off camera, is that when people think of Kenya, one, people think of people only think of Black Africans, right? And then also more popularly, people think of the Kenyan marathon runners.
Exactly.
One of the most famous, marathon runners is Kenyan. And but what I learned though is that those Kenyans are from a specific tribe.
Yes.
Typically.
Specific tribe, yes.
Specifically. So I guess my question is, so I don't get off track, is people, like I said, people have a certain view of what they think of Kenyans. And me as an American, and people like me, when we think about marginalized communities in the United States, it's usually race-based. But it's either or social, like it may be like the LGBT community isn't race-based, but like being a Black American, when we think marginalized community, it's first I think the Black community, or I think potentially the Hispanic community, or the LGBTQ community, or things of that nature. So tell me what that means to you here.
So to me, or to Kenya, what it means is, so the people from the northeastern part of Kenya, they're marginalized. And the ones from the coastal Kenya were also marginalized. So the ones from the north part of Kenya, that side closely borders Somalia. So majority of them are actually Somalis, but they're Kenyans. But they are marginalized.
Somali Kenyans.
And then we have this other side, because we come from the coast, and most of our livelihoods is basically fishing, and predominantly we are Muslims. And I told you, there's a lot. There are Indians who are there are Arabs who are there, you'll find a few mixed race Portuguese who are there. So we are very intermarried with one another. And so what it means is, in terms of opportunities, less opportunities come to that side. It could be because the perception is most of us are not educated enough. But funny enough, there are a lot of scholars who come from that side, from Mombasa. It's just that we've not been amplified or magnified enough. When we talk about how budgets are done or divided back in the day, less is put there, because of there doesn't seem any urgency to have people who are fishermen or people who are just from a certain culture to actually get that. And then it also comes to do with, tribe. I don't think it's race, it's tribe as well, because our population is not big. And we don't have like a set tribe. Like you see Swahili is a word, but I identify as a Swahili. But if you ask me what is a Swahili, you'll be like, it's made up of a lot of people.
Okay.
So most of us there, we identify ourselves as Swahilis. Whether it's someone who's a second generation Swahili, first generation Swahili, we are Swahilis there.
But what does that mean?
it actually so Swahili are,
because for
I'm
example,
failing.
well, the reason I ask is because that's the first time I've heard of it referenced in that way.
Yeah.
Because when you say that, I would think, oh, is it someone who, you know, is a native Swahili speaker? But then that's so many people here.
Yeah.
And then when I think about just the different, tribal representation, whether it's Luau, whether, it's Kikuyu, whether it's Kisi.
Yeah.
And I'm like, would they consider themselves Swahilis? I don't think so.
No.
Right?
So Swahilis, in a very simple term, I wish my grandmother was here. I think they would explain well, because I think we weren't taught well. But Swahilis are mostly people from the coast. Yeah. So you'll find others who are mixed of the local people. They're the Mvitas. So Swahilis are basically, okay, I'll get into more integrity. We have the Mwanamvita, there's Wakilindini, there's Wachangamwe, and I don't know what else, but there are like 5 of them. So these are Swahilis. So
wait, is that a name? What are those?
Wamvita is a region.
Oh, those are regions.
Yeah, so Mombasa is made up of Mvita, Changamwe, Kilindini.
Okay.
So these are places. And so Swahilis were also grouped into these places in Mombasa. Now when the Arabs, the Portuguese, the Indians, the British came, they intermarried. Now when they intermarried with I would call them our ancestors, we were born.
Okay.
So now what we were called is the Swahilis.
Okay.
Yes. So the Swahilis are actually predominantly from the coast, and they are people who have been mixed with other people during the trade times, because the coastal line was the marketplace for trade.
Okay.
So when they were coming to trade, some of them married our ancestors, some of them just had babies with our ancestors, and now those people are Swahilis. It doesn't mean that someone who speaks Swahili is a Swahili.
Okay.
Yeah, and a typical Swahili person would look like me. Yeah.
Okay. They would.
Would look like me. Would look like me. Yeah, but we have different faces and different shades.
Okay.
Now, because of how our history is very intertwined and our history is very, I would say, mixed, we then became marginalized because we really don't have a solid identity.
Right.
As compared to other people who would say they are Kenyans because they're Kikuyus, they're Kambas, they're Luos, they're this, they're that, because that's their tribe. And that's how it is. But then when you come to Swahilis and you're like, okay, I'm trying to look at where I come from, you go deeper and deeper, you find out you had a great grandfather who came from Portugal. But there's no line that you can be able to follow. And then the other thing, we were also influenced by the Zanzibarian. Zanzibar in Tanzania, it's also on the lower side.
Wow, I'm learning so much today, and it's so interesting because I think there's so much connectivity with things that are valuable to me. So when you talk about being a Swahili and being a part of a culture where it's hard to draw your lineage back to, like a specific reference point, that's the same experience that I have as a Black American. And it's a part of the reason why I'm in Africa this year, traveling through Africa, which you didn't ask me about, but I'm sure you're curious. No, which is one of the reasons why I'm traveling around. Like, obviously, as a Black American, our history specifically in America is such that we've been ripped apart from our country of origin. And most of us by a long shot don't know which country we're from. The descendants of the enslaved. It's so like a part of, and as a result, it has social implications, right?
Yes.
So I'm interested to hear, like, what are the social implications for you? Because the social implications for us are that we've identified, been a part of building economically and socially the United States, and as a result, we're proud a lot of times now stepping into being proud about, no, this is our land, but at the same time, there's a little bit we're disconnected from the continent. And so me being someone that wants to repair the relationship with the continent, not only as a personal endeavor or personal effort, but I believe that any people around the world that is respected and has social, economic, and political power taken seriously has a connection to a specific place.
Exactly.
And because as a marginalized people in the United States, we're only about 13% of the population. The majority of all the sub-Saharan African countries are black. And so I think repairing our relationships with those countries, and I know most of it is specific from Western Africa, but I've recently learned that there was some Kenyan slave trade, a part of transatlantic slave trade that's not talked about as much. It's like I'm learning so much. But anyway, I say all that to say the effort is about not reconnection personally, learning more, because we all don't have time to read thousands of books.
We don't.
I'd rather do experiential learning, which is sitting here talking to you. And you've taught me so much just by our conversation. And then also, exposing myself, and then hopefully doing the same for others. So that's my personal journey this year.
Okay, nice.
I said a mouthful. I can talk forever.
How is it going?
How's it going? It's going well. So as you I think as I may have mentioned, like I'm working at the same time, and I currently work as a lawyer in television production. So I'm working about 10 hours a day at minimum.
Wow.
Which is challenging, because not only do I have to when I say have to, but not only do I get to, like, a part, like I want to do this, like I want to be, I want to learn, and obviously I want to do more than what I'm able to do. But it's like, okay, I gotta work. And then then I get to talk to you, and then literally in about 3 hours I go to work. You know what I mean? Or and then I'm planning, like, which place I'm going to be in, where am I going to explore. So it's been a little bit time challenge, but I still see it as a blessing that I get to explore in this way. Like we talk about manifestation. 5 years ago, I was traveling through Eastern, Western Europe, and South America.
Oh, nice.
And I realized that my cohort didn't touch, or my program didn't touch, the African continent. Obviously, I knew that immediately, and I was like, okay. So through that experience, I was like, if I ever get to do this again, I'm going to do it through Africa. And so, through a little bit of my efforts and more of God's orchestration, the opportunity presented itself again, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. We're now here. So just like you talk about, like you just made a proclamation about, like, hey, this is how things need to change. This is what needs to happen in this place. And somebody picked up a phone call, and in my case, it was God that picked up a phone call. Something dropped in my email. My life changed a little bit, and I was able to set myself up. Actually, it was a series of events, but I was able to set myself up in a way that's like, okay, boom, here I am.
Let go. And it's important, actually. And I tell people this, at the end of the day, you just don't know either who's listening or what's happening around you. So you sometimes have to put yourself in a set of mind where this is what you want. Yes, you're dealing with this, but you would also love to have something like this. And then if you keep believing in it and constantly, like, I've always wanted to work with United Nations. And then now they come to me for meetings. So that for me, it's just, I'm thinking, like, wow, sometimes you are working so hard towards something, and then there's this diversion, but then it takes you to a much higher place than where you are, and it gives you an experience. Because I was telling someone just the other day, so right now the hot topic that everyone is asking me is, what's next? Everyone's like, you've been taken up so fast, not like an average young person in Kenya. And then now you are cognizant of the fact that you have 2 months left in the office. So what's next? Like, have you aligned yourself? Have you prepared yourself? Have you done this? And I tell people, God knows what's going to happen next. And people look at me like a crazy person. Because everyone's like, you must be kidding. They're like, there is no way you're just going to be there and say, but I'm like, if I don't say that first, I'm going to panic. Because at the beginning, since last year in November, I was panicking because I was like, oh my God, now what's going to happen? This and that, because I don't come from here. So our home is in Mombasa. So worst comes to worst, I go back home, and I just continue my life on the island. But then I could also want to stay here and see what's going to happen. So I'm like, yeah, God first, and then we'll see what's going to happen. You could first take a breather. Maybe an opportunity won't come there automatically, and it's a sign. Maybe you just need to rest, because also occupying such a position, when you're a young person, there's a lot of expectations and a lot of pressure, so you don't get time to rest. So I was like, yeah, if I don't go back to government, I'm going to first take a break and rest, gather my thoughts together, then see what's next. But like, we live in a society where people don't believe in rest. People don't believe in just wait. Maybe there's something. People don't pick up on signs, and people don't believe in themselves. And I tell people, you need self-care, and that's why I keep advocating about mental health, because in Kenya, but also in the African continent, we're so used to working and working and working and working that we're not resting. And that's because we're in a culture where you finish high school. If you're a guy, you go to university, you get a job, you get a wife, you have children. Before you get a wife, you get a house, you have children, you take care of your wife and your kids. If you're a lady, you have to make sure before you're 35, you finish school, get a job, get married, have 3 kids, and that's about it. And that's how we are raised. And you find that right now, a lot of people who are in their 30s, like myself, sometimes I go back home, and everyone's like, oh, you need to stop being too ambitious. You need to take a break a bit. You need to get married. You need to have children. Because our institution makes us believe that even when you're in a leadership position, you're not fully embedded in it up until you have a significant other next to you. But so many of us, and I'll talk about like the Swahili girls, because that's our culture. Our culture is you get educated a bit, and then you get married and you have children. But right now, so many Swahili girls are actually moving away from Mombasa and the coast. They have jobs. We live alone. Right now, I live alone with my sister. That was not the culture. A girl who was not married from our society, our community, was never allowed to live alone, was never allowed to travel the country. I come from a conservative family, but they managed to let me live in Southeast Asia and Europe, and now I'm in Nairobi. So things are changing. And we need to keep advocating and talking about this so that we can influence each other's minds. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of like pressure also from where you come from on your side, when it comes to even being like a black person. Absolutely. And trying to really prove to other people that, we actually are capable of showing up and of doing this and being productive. So I feel like as much as the gaps can be so wide, there's some certain elements that are very similar when it comes to the African setup that really sometimes restrains us from actually living to our full potential.
There's so much you said. I'd say there is a lot of similarities and intersectionality with some of the pressures that we have, like as young people. And what I think one thing that I was looking to explore is through your intention and your impact and efforts with young people, how do you feel like that contributes towards changing those narratives? Making sure that people don't feel like they're rushed to do A, B, and C by the time they're 35. Also empowering women. How do you feel like your efforts and the things that you're passionate about, how does that change society? How does that change the world around us?
I think it does. I'd say just me being here, but also being very vocal about what I do and advocating, it's really given, the change that it's given is hope and understanding. It's made young people understand that you don't need to rush as much as it happens, but you don't need to rush, because I came from a place where most of young people would be in, and then all of a sudden, whoop, yes, I'm here. But then the difference is what I did in between, which was taking time to internalize my experience and sharing it with others. And so that's one thing that it's influenced other people, young people in this country. I mean, my DMs are open, my emails are open, I have an open door policy. when it comes to my office. Of course, with a little bit of security, but I have that
Right,
because
right.
I occupy a very high position. But that itself has made conversations become very easy with other people. It's made young people open up and really tell me that we don't really have hope, or we don't have faith, or we don't trust the different things that are placed for us. So how do we do that? And so having this open dialogue and telling people that, yeah, it's never black and white, but you can try, you can change, you can do this. And the fact that I am a person who's not so common, now that's what has really helped. A person who's really from, and I would say again, a marginalized community, because honestly, I'm not the common face that you would see occupying such a position in Kenya. If right now you would just lay out everyone who occupies such seats, you'll find out that I'm the one who's just the most different, because I'm not what Kenyans would expect. And sometimes I can actually, the good thing about that is I can actually walk around sometimes, go into a cafe and nobody would know me, which is amazing, because then you get the real story about what people feel.
Right.
And so being the person who's not so common has also instilled hope and really reignited trust into young people when it comes to governance, when it comes to politics, when it comes to really change, and when it comes to influence. And so these are the things, the little and small elements that have actually influenced and changed people's minds, which I personally bank on a lot. And when I go to places, I actually highlight the fact that this is something different, and I highlight the fact that this is where I come from. And the reason I do that is because I want them to understand that the responsibility lies within oneself.
Absolutely.
Because nobody is going to come and change Kenya, especially for us young people. I mean, 35 million is a lot. So if we don't take it upon ourselves, no one's going to change the country. And it's the same thing with our continent. I'm fortunate enough to go to Accra, Ghana for events, and Tanzania, and even when I was in the UK. And I tell people, it has to come from you. It has to be a personal initiative to create that influence and to create that impact for someone else.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't mean you have to influence or impact 10 million. Even that one person.
Absolutely.
That one person, it can mean it can just change everything and shift people's minds.
And in many of us, I feel like it's an inner voice.
It is.
Right. It's not like, it's something that tells you you need to do something.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you just be like, It's like something that just like pulling on you. Like, for instance, do I really, you think my aspirations be running around with a camera to be like, no, it's just, you have moments in life where you know, like, okay, something pulls on you and you're like, I can probably address this a little bit differently.
Yeah.
What does this situation need? How can I serve this moment?
Exactly.
How can I serve like this, calling like within me?
It is. Even leadership, I tell people leadership, first of all, being a leader is not about you. Being a leader is about the people you are actually impacting and influencing.
Absolutely.
Then the other thing, leadership is spiritual. Now, if somebody understands that, then it becomes so easy to actually do everything else. It's spiritual and very personal, because it's your decision to actually go out there and say, I want to do this not for my own benefit, but for the benefit of those who are going to be directly or indirectly impacted.
Absolutely.
And now it takes time, and it takes patience, it takes understanding, and sometimes it doesn't take time and patience. Sometimes, like I tell people, I was just thrown into the big waters and I drowned for a while, and then after that I just had to pull back up and do what I have to do. And there's this thing, I'm on a board, I'm a council member of a political foundation. It's a foundation about leadership and trying to see whether we can reinstill democracy in the different ways in which we lead in our own countries.
Right.
And there's a report that we had launched, and one of the things that came about was political leadership incubators. Startups always have incubators, and so imagine having political leadership incubators in every country.
Right.
We're starting from the basics, trying to teach people how to actually lead without referring to how people led 100 years ago or centuries ago. Why can't we now formulate and create our own leadership styles? And I think that is amazing. That is something that we can adapt to. Same thing as when you're talking about cultures. Being a cultural diplomat, I strongly believe, like what you're doing right now, that's the best way to experience and impact, because you're going to share stories. You're also experiencing stories. So it gives you a different trajectory on what you're dealing with, what you're seeing, how you're seeing things. And sometimes conflict, war happens because we don't understand each other's cultural backgrounds. We want to instill our own ideas and ideologies into other people, when what we can actually do is sit down and, beyond mediation, try to think culturally this is acceptable and that's acceptable. How do we merge that together?
Absolutely.
And that's, for me, that's the secret formula, I think.
You know, when you talk about political incubators, something just happened recently in the United States.
Yeah.
President Obama and the I think the CEO the co-founder of Airbnb, they just created this fund to fund students that are interested in public services, in public service.
Okay.
But at the same time, it allows them to travel during the summer, become exposed to like different environments around the world. So when you talk about like an incubator in that way, I mean, it's not really an incubator, but when you said that, that's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the Obama initiative I was telling you about.
Yes.
But one more thing I was thinking is when I messaged you, and I was like, hey, I see you follow me. I'm in Kenya. I'm from the States. And I told you, like, hey, I'd like to come and talk to you. What made you say yes?
Number one, it was the work that you're doing. So I followed you because I loved the content you were putting. You had your link of your YouTube channel, so I went there and I checked out the conversation. So you were very articulate in what you were saying, and then your bio said something about learning different cultures and diversity. And I was like, you know what? This is a good way to actually have a conversation with someone who's not from here and share ideas. And also, I felt like it would be a good way to actually put some message out there and correct people's stereotypes about what they think when it comes to Kenya, or when it comes to how people look, and also cultures.
Absolutely.
So actually it was just that. And also because, number one, I love traveling, and number two, I love meeting new people. So I was like, this is also a good opportunity, and to show people that, sometimes someone in such a high political place, or not a political place, but executive. So we are called executives. So the Kenya has 3 arms of government: executive, legislature, and judiciary. Executive are us, the people who are in the president's cabinet, who are the ministers and the deputy ministers. Legislators are the members of parliament, those who pass laws, policies, and everything. Judiciary is the law.
The court.
Things that you also do. And so I was like, you know what? It would be nice for people to know that even someone in my position is able to have a conversation and able to learn from someone else.
Absolutely.
So kudos to your great job as well.
Well, I'm extremely grateful.
Yes.
No, thank you so much. I'm grateful that you responded favorably and made time for us to have this conversation. I'm grateful because I think it is important, not only like when I'm having conversations with people that are, part of the culture of whatever particular country, the people in the streets, the people that are part of those marginalized communities, but this is my first time having an opportunity to speak with someone that was a part of, any form of government. So I'm grateful that we're able to have this conversation, and I hope that we can continue to have conversations.
Definitely.
I know you have another meeting coming up. So much I'd love to expound on. But I'd say thanks so much for your time today, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yes, karibu.
soon.
And you know what? We'll still keep in touch. I'm wishing you the very best.
Thank you so much.
Whether or not I'll be a government official or not, we'll still keep in touch.
I know. You know what? We shouldn't even end it on that. Like, what are your aspirations?
So,
or what do you like? I mean, I think that's where we should go. So, I mean, we talk about the work that you've done, some of the impact that you had.
Yes.
But the importance on not only intergenerational engagement, but advocating for youth just being engaged generally. It doesn't stop. What do you feel like is?
It doesn't stop. And for me, honestly, the first thing I say is like, God knows. However, My plan is to be a Pan-African advocate for young people and young women and children. And the reason I say that is because I believe that the continent has diverse programs in every country. But the problem usually comes about when young people or young women and children are not given a chance to be on a platform to articulate themselves well and to also raise their issues or their interests when it comes to leadership in any sort of way, whether you're in a different industry, whether in politics, whatever it is. And so if I am going to be, or my plan is to keep going on, to keep speaking, to keep advocating, but to also create a synergy where I'm able to bring on other young people on board so that they can be part of it. And I tell people this, I tell them, even if I don't come back to government, I'm praying and hoping that other young people, because of the work that I've done and my colleagues have done, has proven that young people can actually take up leadership positions at national levels, so they also come on board. And I still have my hope of being the Oprah Winfrey of Africa, because communication and really speaking up and identifying critical issues is really important. I really love storytelling as well. And so I had started a podcast before, I did a YouTube before, but then with work things just don't work out well. But when I do get the time, I think I will go back to that. I'll go back to really telling the African stories. Like I have one of my really close friends is the youngest member of parliament in Namibia. She's 23 years old.
Oh, wow.
Her name is Patience. Yes. And so you can imagine like the way we are. So she's in the legislative arm in her country, and I'm here, and we met on Instagram. Next thing you know, she came to Kenya to support me when I was launching my book. So it's if we can create borderless interaction, borderless synergies, I think that would be one amazing and fantastic thing that I can do.
You just hit on something so important to me.
Yes.
I mean, and it's so two things, and I
Yeah.
think that's why we're going to be like hopefully remain friends.
Yes.
One, I think about reintroducing what it means to be Pan-African.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
One, I think that as a person that's from Africa, you inherently understand what that means.
Yes.
Pan-African movements, from how we know it in the States, sometimes it sounds nostalgic. You know, it's like movements of the past. But what does Pan-African mean now? And what does it mean to the people who are descendants from Africa who are no longer here?
Yeah.
From people who may not even speak English.
Yeah.
I think there's a need and an emphasis to reintroduce what Pan-African advocacy is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's so cool. That's like so interesting, and that's
Yes.
important to me.
Yeah.
That touches a nerve. And
Yeah.
I think also another thing that's really important when you talked about this borderless interaction,
Yeah.
just thinking about how much more we're able to engage, expose, amplify, and impact just because I have a U.S. passport.
Okay.
When I'm just thinking about, and that's not like I don't deserve any credit for that. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
But another person also doesn't deserve to be limited
Exactly.
in the same way.
Yeah.
So when we talk about having more borderless interactions, obviously
Yeah.
you and I have specific privileges, you know, as a result of our respective, about your respective position, your
Yeah.
ability to do things,
Yeah.
mine literally sometimes by just being born in the places we are.
Yeah.
And so I think for just the advancement of society,
Yeah.
but even advancement of our initiatives, that using the resources and privileges that we do have, to have some of those borderless interactions, and
Yeah.
how important it is for not only contextualizing our experiences,
Yeah.
but how we impact the world around us.
Yeah.
And I could go on for ages, but those two things that you
Yeah.
touched on were like,
They're very important.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, just to mention something, one of the ways in which I'm looking at how we can achieve borderless interactions and also a Pan-African approach is, you see, the same campaign that I launched that was called Kenyan Imimi.
yeah,
I'm planning to now, or I'm in the process of now advancing it and calling it African Imimi. African Imimi means Africa is me. Basically being able to make every African understand the importance of Pan-Africanism in our generation. Understanding that if someone comes from Ghana or someone comes from South Africa and another one from Kenya, we can still synergize and work together and use our stories, not our history, but our current stories, to actually create and build a new space in which we can now use to integrate and to lead. And that's what I'm looking at. Because every time I go or every time I interact with another African young person from a different country, you can see the need to know more about what do you do in your country, what programs do you have, and how can we work together. But what limits is the fact that we have such an individualistic mentality where we just want to do stuff because we are Kenyans. No, why can't you do stuff as a Kenyan but influencing and advancing a Ugandan or a Rwandese or a Nigerian or a Ghanaian? Why can't we do that? And so that's something that I want to do. And that's why I said, if I don't get back here, the next boom for me is literally working on how to bring every young person around to come to one place and understand that this is what we need to do. And I'm even talking about beyond Africa, even for the ones who have, the way you were saying, the ones who have historical inclinations with Africa, even them. How do we now synergize and bring it together? How do we create this new sense of force to really establish something that will also make us feel like, you know what, at the end of the day, we're not losing out on anything. We're actually advancing forward for the generation that is going to follow after us. Yeah, so hopefully, let's see.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For your time. And yeah, I look forward to the future. I look forward to what's next for you. Elections are coming up.
I know, that's a great
and then I look forward how we can continue to collaborate and build community. So
no, you've gained a follower. Like I am living through your lens. I like that. And honestly, you've made a friend. So anytime you come to Kenya, or even if I'm going to be on those sides, my brother studies in Canada.
Oh, he does?
So yeah, we were planning a trip on the other side. He's always wanted to go to Las Vegas, but you know.
Well, look.
See. now exactly.
We'll set it up for you.
Yeah, so we'll do that. But thank you so much for also like wanting to have a conversation with me. And I hope people will learn from this conversation we've had. Yeah.
Thank you.
Asante.
Asante.
Yes.
Asante san.
Karibu.
All right, y'all. So I am in the CBD. I've just left the office. We had a great conversation. It's so dope. They brought, you see that right there? See that guy right there? That's literally her bodyguard. Now, you know, just like normal, I'm headed to work.